like I said before, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, my dad's mother's house, growing up. Like after school, the occasional weekends, not too many weekends, but during the summer, we were kind of there every day. And my grandmother never had much money, or if she did, she pretended like she didn't. Like old people will always do, oh, I don't have any money. Which she really didn't. She didn't have much. She didn't have retirement. She just got Social Security and stuff like that. So she was real cheap. God rest her soul. She'd buy the cheapest thing on the shelf at stores. She shopped at Save-A-Lot. I don't know if you've ever been there, but Save-A-Lot and Big Lots were her two favorite stores. If you could eat it, she bought it at Save-A-Lot. If you could sit on it or build it, she got it at Big Lots. So that just tells you a little bit about her. Her favorite thing to do was to go to yard sales. Yard sales, garage sales, whatever you like to call it. And she'd get up early, and we'd go with her. She'd look in the paper, and she wasn't a reader. Like, she couldn't sit still long enough to read that much stuff. She just like glanced over the newspaper. She was too busy doing 100 different things. But she'd memorize that yard sale page, and she knew exactly where they were and exactly where to go. And she'd always say, we got to get there first to get the good stuff. I don't know what the good stuff was, because she never really specified. She just said the good stuff. My theory is, now that I'm older, is that the good stuff was stuff that, number one, was good, for lack of a better term. And number two, and this is most important, the person didn't know what they had. They just had some stuff and they wanted to sell it. And that was what was important to her. Or if they just had deals where everything was $1, but you could dicker them down to $0.25. She liked that sort of thing too. And we would go to like the scariest neighborhoods. Like, just so much poverty, and she didn't care. She'd get out and just look for stuff. And since we were kids, we wanted to find toys. And there were always toys just about everywhere. So that was important to us. But she didn't care. She would go anywhere and everywhere. Memorize the page. She was always shopping, looking to buy stuff that people didn't know what they had, because she bought and sold some stuff, but she just liked nothing more than to find something and get a deal. Because one time she bought a goofy looking, I don't even know what to call it, I guess it was a bracelet. She bought it for $0.25, and it was supposedly worth $400. And she told it to my uncle, and he said, I bet you'll take the first $100 bill that comes through the door. And she just liked getting the bargain, the value. Because another time, she bought something, she was like a Beanie Baby, and she looked it up, and I kind of got to look at her valuation method. She had a collectible book, and she looked at the first one, and she said, oh, it's worth $100. And I was bored. I gave it a look. I said, no, that's for the British one. That one's from Mexico. That one's only worth $15. And my uncle turns to me and said, you let the air out of her tires on that. And as the year went by, she spent most mornings and weekends just waking up early. And it didn't matter what time they said the yard sale started. She was going to go. If it said start at 8, she was going to go at 7 and wake the people up. Didn't matter if they weren't up yet or didn't have their stuff out. She wasn't having none of that. And then one time, I get a phone call from a police officer. And it says, hi, I'm trying to reach you. Your grandmother was driving, leaving the yard sale, of course, and she sideswiped another car. And she didn't notice. Her mind was on other stuff. And they went and talked to her, said, hey, you hit that car, you need to trade insurance. And she just didn't register. And they claim they're going to arrest her, but I found it really hard to believe they would arrest an old lady. But they might have. My dad was like, well, they don't care. They'll arrest whoever, whatever. And we had to go get her. I felt bad because not too long after that, she was no longer able to drive. But still, like, when they got a chance, my sister and my cousin would take her to yard sales, as long as they had the time and were able, and they had a big time. And her favorite time of year was where we grew up. The world's longest yard sale would start. And it used to start the first week of school. And it was very inconvenient for kids trying to get to school. You had people driving really slowly down the road to look at everything. My dad still says to this day that if I ever have a heart attack during that time, y'all may as well just go ahead and be casket shopping, because I'm not going to make it. Because the cars would drive by really slowly to look at stuff, and my dad hated it. He said if I drove really slowly by their house during any other time of year, they'd probably shoot me. But they come to our neighborhood. So he hated it. My grandmother loved it. That meant people would come and shop and buy the fruits of her labor for a year. Eventually, they got smart, and they moved it up to a week before. Actually, probably starts next week. Since this is late July, I think next week, the first week in August, is when it starts. So they moved it up to not interfere with school. And she lived for that. She'd set up for it. I'd spend the night with her. I could have been better about helping, because we'd wake up early and I was gung-ho for the first few hours, but I'd get bored and go watch cartoons. But I spent a lot of time yard selling, and even now I'll drive by one where I live and say, oh, well, it's too late now. Somebody already got the good stuff.